Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be discussing kind of a problem that was brought to light with the 2.3 story available in the Shadow of Snowstorm patch, and something that's kind of worrying, at least in my opinion, for kind of the future of the game, especially for players who haven't been playing for a long time. So just very briefly, this is not going to have any spoilers, but I will be talking super broadly about some of the points. Like, don't worry if you haven't played through it, this isn't going to spoil you, but I'm just letting you know in case you are uber worried about being spoiled about it, but I'm not going into anything even remotely specific about the story. But kind of the problem that I didn't really realize until this point was that this story is only available for like 2 weeks. Like, once it's gone, it's gone, and players aren't going to have access to it. So we've had events in the past with, similar things, that some points, in the Labyrinth story with Child, and, the original one with the Ballad Year all the way back in 1.1, but those kind of had more essential things in it, or things we could have, semi-inferred, whereas the story in in the Shadows Over Snowstorm event does have larger implications on the game's story as a whole, rather than just like reiterating information we already knew or necessarily telling a side story. It kind of does tackle or does at least hint at things that are important to the kind of the core narrative. This is kind of one of the problems with this game, is that because there isn't really like one single long narrative we're following, we're essentially just getting, because we need stories for each character and stuff like that, really. So we're having a whole bunch of little stories following other characters that need to kind of fit together into the larger narrative. And because we have to worry about making sure we catch up with new characters as they come out and stuff, we don't really have time to develop the stories that probably should be told. Like, realistically, the whole Inazuma arc shouldn't have been 2 patches. It should have at least been 3 or 4. There's no point that the Inazuma story arc shouldn't run most of the way into whenever we end up going to Sumeru, or the next big story event. If there's a what was that called? We Will Be Together, kind of to bridge the gap between the end of the Leeway story and the start of the Inazuma story. If there's something like that, but there's kind of it's a little weird that there was kind of this whole war and the big event and the aftermath, and all that was really done in 2 patches. Heck, even the 2.2 story didn't even have, despite it being more Inazuma story, didn't really even have a lot to do with kind of the main conflict in Inazuma. Now, I think part of that obviously is because the Inazuma story and resolving it is kind of important for Raiden's character, and having her be a playable character and why that makes sense. They kind of have to resolve it quick in order to make her an available character. I think that's kind of something they pigeonholed themselves in, because other characters, the only other character that we've had that was quote-unquote a villain at their time was Child, who still arguably is a villain, but at the time Child was introduced, he still helped the character in their story. He wasn't a main antagonist as much as he just has his own goals and ambitions. He isn't. It'd be a bit like if they released the Senora, before she got vaporized, as a playable character while she was still a bad guy, and kind of how that's weird, and kind of how I think that would make sales lower. So in order to make her seem better, they wanted to finish the Raiden story before she actually came out, so that, or as she came out, so that people would there'd be no preamble about rolling for a bad guy or something. That's just kind of a weakness of the story of this game, but that's not the main topic of this video. The main topic of this video is how I think that, despite the fact that I love this event, I thought it was really cool. I'm not even a big story guy in most games. I'm almost entirely a gameplay guy, but I still like the world. I like kind of knowing about these characters, and it's fun for a little bit. So, but even I really kind of enjoyed the whole story and kind of the cool tidbits we learn in it, and kind of the arcs of it. It was really interesting, and has really interesting implications for the future with a lot of the stuff that happens. So My worry is that now our new players just not going to be able to experience this. Like, there arguably is some information here that is kind of important to know going forward, at least in like the larger narrative of the world. So like, if they don't know that, like obviously they can get it from another source, or maybe it'll come up in another story. But you know, it's kind of a little weird. So I kind of wish this was a more permanent story, but also like going forward as well, like because this is an event story that's not even necessarily tied into the main story, and it ends on kind of a cliffhanger. Does this mean we're not gonna like get the resolution for this story for a long time now? And like what's gonna happen with that? So this is kind of just like a brief little ramblings video, just kind of like I think they should kind of either focus in the narrative a little bit more or be a little bit more careful with these events. Like there's no reason, like I get why they want to do an event attached to it, but there's no reason that the story couldn't have just been Albedo's story chapter 2, much like how the whole Ajdaha thing is Zhongli's story chapter 2. There's no reason this couldn't have been Albedo's story chapter 2 instead of a limited time event. The same reason that the Labyrinth event couldn't have just been Child's story chapter 2. Definitely going forward in the future, I hope that they at least consider like tying these stories into the already available systems in the game, like the already available character story quests. Is there any way to see the ones you've already done? No, it doesn't look like it. But if they can tie it into that system, that would be much better in my opinion. That's kind of a direction I think they should look at going forward. I kind of understand why maybe the Labyrinth one you couldn't do that because it was tied so heavily to that event, but despite this one like referencing the event, it's not actually really tied to the event a complete ton except for like maybe one thing. But you could just not have that. You could have just the story mode version be in there, or just like have a story mode version and not have to have the complete event with all the different things in there. Sorry, I'm trying to be a little vague just in case someone is watching this but hasn't necessarily done the event yet. But yeah, it's just kind of my thoughts going forward and kind of like something that popped up in my head that was a little worrying, and I hope that maybe they correct going forward. But I appreciate you watching. Just a little quick side note, we're probably also going to start posting a little bit of other. I've been playing a lot of WoW and enjoying myself. I'm not going to stop posting Genshin, but I'm probably going to start posting some WoW just to have more stuff on the channel. And then probably also I'm really looking forward to Lost Ark, so probably a ton of that when that comes out. So if you have any interest in that, maybe subscribe, stick around, or not, you're just here for the Genshin. We'll be doing more too. But I hope you have a good day, and I hope you have good luck rolling for Ito. If I probably will have another video out before then, but if I don't anyway, still good luck on Ito.